Welcome to the WP Builds podcast, bringing you the latest news from the WordPress community. Now, welcome your hosts, David Waumsley and Nathan Wrigley.
Hello there once again and welcome to the WP Builds podcast. This is episode number 224, entitled H is for Health. It was published on Thursday the 8th of April 2021. My name's Nathan Wrigley, and before we get into the podcast main content, a few little bits of housekeeping. Head over to wpbuilds.com, that is our website, and over there you'll find all of the content that we produce in the WordPress space. The best pages to mention are wpbuilds.com/subscribe. That's a page that will enable you to find much of what we do kind of automatically, if you like. So, for example, if you go to the link there and join our Facebook group, you'll be notified in that group when we produce new content. Also, there's ways to subscribe to our email list so that you can be alerted via email. And there's things like our Twitter feed as well. So that's wpbuilds.com/subscribe. Another page which is very helpful is wpbuilds.com/deals. That's a list of WordPress deals, coupon codes off significant amounts of money to be saved. It's there 24/7, 365 days of the year. So if you're in the market for a particular WordPress thing this week, you never know, that might be a good place to check out wpbuilds.com/deals. And also wpbuilds.com/advertise. If you have a WordPress product or service that you would like to put in front of a WordPress specific audience, go to that page and fill out the form and we'll see what we can do, see if we can get you on the podcast. A bit like these two companies. The WP Builds podcast is brought to you today by Cloudways. Cloudways is a managed cloud hosting platform that ensures simplicity, performance and security. It offers cloud servers from 5 different cloud providers that you can manage through its intuitive platform. Some of the features include 24/7 support, free migrations and dedicated firewalls. You can check it all out at cloudways.com. And A/B split test. Do you want to set up your A/B split tests in record time, like in a couple of minutes? Use your existing pages and test anything against anything else. Buttons, images, headers, rows, anything. And the best part is that it works with Elementor, Beaver Builder and the WordPress block editor. You can check it out and get a free demo at absplittest.com. Okay, just before we begin, I think it's time to mention something that I'm doing later on this year. In May, well, the specific dates are in fact May the 10th to May the 14th. So that's May the 10th to May the 14th. We're running the Page Builder Summit. We did this last year in October and it was very popular, very successful. We had over 35 speakers in 5 days and we're doing something very similar again. Last time we had a different URL. We've decided to go with pagebuildersummit.com this time. So that's pagebuildersummit.com. There's no hyphens or anything strange. You can go and check that page out. I'm not entirely sure when we'll open the registration for that, but you can certainly fill out the form on the homepage right now and you'll be able to register your interest. And what that's basically doing is saying, let me know when registration proper opens. So once more, the Page Builder Summit, we've got heaps and heaps of speakers lined up to talk to you about everything in the WordPress page builder space, from just about every single page builder in existence. It should be a really good event. Once again, the dates, put it in your diary. It's the 10th of May to the 14th of May. I'll be giving more details out in the run-up to the event, but pagebuildersummit.com. Go and register so that you can be alerted when the proper enrollment starts. Okay, let's get into the main content, shall we? We're on episode 224, H is for Health. It's another one of our A to Z WordPress series, and we've got to the letter H, and so we're talking about health. We don't mean our health, we're talking about the health of our websites, and you probably know, if you've been in this business for any length of time, there's an awful lot that can go wrong. So examples might be monitoring against DDoS attacks, looking at things like visual layout and style to make sure there's no changes over time. What about uptime monitoring? Do you watch for domains expiring? Do you do backups? Do you do SEO checks? In other words, do you try to keep your WordPress websites up to date and in good health? There's absolutely tons to talk about in here, and we probably only just begin to scratch the surface. But it's a nice chat anyway. I hope that you enjoy it. If you do, leave some comments in the thread on wpbuilds.com, search for episode number 224, or go to our Facebook group and leave some comments there, wpbuilds.com/Facebook. I hope that you enjoy it.
Hello, this is another A to Z of WordPress chat where we attempt to cover all the major aspects of building and maintaining sites with WordPress. Today is H for health. And, well, there's a lot to talk about in this one.
Yeah, press-ups, sit-ups, burpees, all of that. Good diet.
Yeah, I think when we started this off, we thought we'll probably just be talking a lot about what was added to WordPress itself in version 5.1, which was kind of its health check there. But we've kind of expanded out to all kinds of aspects of really health monitoring, the kind of things that we need to do if we're providing care plans. So I think it's probably this chat is really for those kind of people who make some money after looking after other people's sites.
Yeah, there is a surprisingly large amount in this conversation, and it did prompt us both to go and have a look at the site health information again, and it kind of revealed to me that there's way more in there than I had remembered. My only real experience with using site health is when it sends you an email to say something has gone wrong. I kind of switched the widget off in the dashboard, and it doesn't really surface itself anymore. But I switched it back on and went and had a look. And there's actually quite a lot of interesting stuff in there, if you're a bit of a nerd and you want to know how big your database is and so on. But yeah, it covers an awful lot more than just site health inside of WordPress.
Yeah, well, we both did it, didn't we? We went through the little info section on it. So it's in WordPress under tools, and then you can find it there. And in all honesty, I looked at it because I was a bit grumpy about the fact that it was added, because it was going to rate my site and my clients would be able to see it, those who are administrators. So really, the first thing I did was just find a way to disable it so they wouldn't see what the health check was saying. But looking at it again, looking under the info section, it makes it realize it really does tell you a lot of information. Like you found out that your database was bigger than you expected.
Yeah, a lot bigger than I expected. When you say you disabled it, that wasn't an option somewhere. Presumably you, I don't know, put something in functions.php or something like that and you hid it permanently.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, that's right. There is a filter around there. I mean, a Google search, how to hide the health check. In fact, to be honest, I didn't hide it until it came out later. I can't remember what version that was. 5.2 was it the next one when it came out, and it put it in the dashboard so everyone could see it. It came out in 5.1 originally. So, but yeah, it's turned out to be something quite interesting. But it is mostly performance, really, isn't it, and security.
Yeah,
it tells you about.
Yeah, it's not probably going to be useful to your clients. Hence the fact that you might not want to reveal any of this stuff. And also it continues to do that irritating thing where if you've received an update to WordPress, a 5.6, 5.7 update, you get the new theme. If there is a new theme, so 2021 or 2020, that gets installed. And then it tells you that you've got unnecessary themes as a problem, which, I don't think that's entirely helpful. If it installed a theme that you're not using, maybe it shouldn't be flagging that up. But fair enough, it is there, but your clients probably don't need to know. Why is there another theme in here? What's going on there?
Yeah, I know. I mean, the ideal is that you only have themes and plugins that are active. Anything else is a problem. And I don't think that's always the case. It really does depend on your theme and your plugin. I was always brought up with the idea that people far smarter than me said that it was always a good idea to have one of the default themes in as well, should you have a problem. So it will kind of default to that.
Yes, I've heard this wisdom as well, but I've decided to disregard it. And really for me, it's just about using up less resources on the server. You're right. If something went wrong with the theme, at least I'd have something to fall back on. But I've never really encountered that problem. My themes of choice have always been stable and ready to be used, and so those other default themes have never been implemented by me, and really they just sit there waiting to be deleted and causing causing a site health notification problem. But it gives you things like database size, where all of your files are located, how much data is being consumed on the hard disk, as well as things like which plugins are active, which plugins are deactivated that you should probably go and remove from your website. So there's actually more in there than I thought. There's 2 tabs. There's an info tab, which has got a big accordion of about 12 different things, and there's a lot in there. But I would imagine if you're listening to this podcast, you probably knew the majority of what was in there anyway. You probably were aware of what themes and so on were installed, but perhaps not.
Yeah, there was one that got us, I think both of us, with it was always requesting that we installed. Now, I think it says on the interface in Magic, where we looked it up, didn't we? And it's image magic.
Yeah, a C and a K.org, I think it is. Yeah. And it handles well, we're not entirely sure what it handles, but certainly it is capable of doing things like rotating, skewing, resizing images. So I don't know if it is key and instrumental in things that you might do in the media library, cropping an image and so on. But you seem to think that you've got websites where that's not enabled on the server side, but it still functions in WordPress as you would expect. Yeah,
well, my initial understanding was it did the compressing, because when you put something into the media library, it's supposed to compress it by 10%. And that's all I thought it did. But anyway, Short Pixel is taking care of that for me. Okay. And without it on my servers, it doesn't seem to cause a problem. So
okay. Well, I mean, it's there, it's useful. Maybe there's plans for it to become more useful. And certainly, if you've ever had a white screen of death type incident, at the same time, that it enables the updates that came at the same time enabled you to still access the back end of WordPress and also receive emails outlining that an error has occurred. So there were substantial improvements. If something did go wrong with a plugin, you now have wiggle room to kind of log in and take care of that if you need to, whereas before it was, things were dead and you had to go and change the name of a plugin or something via FTP. But that's all been amended, and so those were quite significant improvements. And getting the email to warn you that something has gone wrong, again, it's nice. It's a really good feature.
I think so. Well, initially I didn't like it. And in fact, when we were just talking earlier, I kind of realized the sense of it, because I put myself in the shoes of the regular DIY user of WordPress. And you just think, how would they ever know if things were going amiss on their sites? They just wouldn't, would they? They're not informed like we are. So at least it would give them some kind of information. Over the years, the PHP version won't be updated unless they do something by their hosts on the whole, and they just won't know unless that status is changing. And I can now see much better why it needed to go in the dashboard, even though I want to hide it.
Yeah. I don't know if there's, I know it gives you a sort of rating. In my case, the site that I'm looking at the moment is just rated as good, and it's got a green circle, and that indicates, I presume, that most things that are in order are checked, and things are as they should be. I don't really know what that sliding scale looks like. At what point does it start to alarm you and post things that look irritating to you, and how does it prompt you to go about amending things? And again, I'm not sure on what level it provides information to assist you with things that you need to take care of. In my case, it's literally saying 2 things. You've got plugins and themes that you need to remove. Everything else is marked off as good. I presume that wizard over time might take care of more things. Maybe it does already. Maybe if I inherited a site which had catastrophically bad site health, it would assist me with that process. But I'm a bit ignorant of that, sadly.
I never asked you this earlier. When you've had the email saying you've got a problem with your site, do you really take that much notice of what's there? Do you read it? Do you understand it?
If memory serves, and I'm sure I'll be corrected on this if I'm wrong, it's just like a one-line, almost like plain text email, and I can't remember the content of it. But in every case, I knew already why I was receiving that email. Maybe the server was overloaded, or maybe I'd done something and I don't know, saved something which ultimately caused the site to be white screening, and I knew what was going on. So no, I can't say that it's ever prompted me to do something that I would otherwise not have known about.
It's interesting because the ones I've had have been quite curious. They've usually been running out of memory,
right?
And in fact, I think a couple of the times it's been what I thought was a fairly it was activated plugin. I think it was Backup Buddy using it more, but it wasn't set to do any scheduled backups.
Okay.
It was on, but it wasn't set to do anything. It was just there to manually do a backup. And I was really surprised by this, but I went into the sites. There was no issue. I couldn't find an issue at all. It just kind of gets flagged up about some extra memory use.
You see, that could be potentially a bit alarming, couldn't it? Because that may have prompted you to I don't know, seek another plugin solution, or just basically waste a bunch of time on something which was incorrect. So having it in WordPress is great, but it sounds like you've got mixed feelings about the confidence you've got in it. And if that's the case, kind of pushes you towards ignoring it and disabling it, as you've obviously done, rather than embracing it and thinking, actually, this is a really useful tool, and we'll probably get onto tools which purport to do similar things in the future, and maybe rely on those because you feel they're more reliable.
Yeah, well, it's kind of rare that I've got something, but because there's been no apparent issue with the site once I've gone in. But I do like the idea that it will send you in and you can go into safe mode. It's quite cool that it's there.
Yep. Yeah. Certainly a step up from what the process that we had to go through before. The fact that you can actually have this safe mode, which enables you to interact. I can't remember what the constraints of that are. What it is that you're allowed to do and what it is that you can't do inside of that safe mode. But, it's handy to have. Very nice addition.
Yeah. Shall we talk about the other things that we decided that probably go under site health or monitoring things? So there's a whole bunch of things. I just, it always surprises me that we have so many people, so many DIYers who do WordPress, because this is such stuff to learn. So, obviously there's the security stuff that we do, kind of monitoring attacks, for security. There's monitoring of kind of dynamic functionality in your site. I mean, it's something that, to be honest, I've still never solved myself. I mean, how do you know that your contact form is working or your add to cart button is actually working on your site? Monitoring visual layouts and styling to see that your site, when you're not going to it, I'm sure most people don't spend all day looking at their own sites to know that it's still looking good when you've had an update. Well, there's a whole bunch of other stuff. Uptime monitoring, domain expiring, backups, SEO stuff, including Google Search Console stuff, broken links, support, and accessibility. These are all things that we thought were kind of site health things that we'd have to monitor.
There's a really large amount in that. I suppose in most cases, you would hope that WordPress is a kind of set it and forget it solution where, what was there yesterday will be what's going to be there in a year's time should you not go and do anything. WordPress will update itself. The plugins can now update themselves. You'd hope that it would look the same and behave the same and everything would just function. But you're absolutely right. You're quite interesting to mention things like contact forms. I have literally no idea if those contact forms are working. But I've definitely been contacted by clients, slightly embarrassingly, who have contacted me to say that they know their contact form isn't working because they've received, somebody's gone around the houses to find their email address, emailed them, and said, my contact form isn't working. And usually it's just something like an SMTP plugin that, I don't know, for some reason the configuration of the username and password has gone astray, something like that. But I don't really have a process for checking that those dynamic things are working. And you rely quite a lot on things like forms. And if they fail, then, that could be catastrophic. You just sort of pray that they are working. That extends, doesn't it? Things like making sure that the checkout works as expected, that people are not finding that the shopping cart actually doesn't do what it's supposed to do. And I don't really have a system for monitoring that other than manually doing it. I used to have this process whereby every time I updated a website, I would go through a kind of very minimal laundry list of things. So it would involve going to certain pages, key pages like the home page and the About Us page, or whatever I decided for that particular site. But I've more or less stopped doing that as that task just became an absolute verbatim copy of what I did yesterday, which is to say, just click on some links and everything worked as expected. Comes a point where the attrition of doing that doesn't seem worth it. You just think, well, it's going to be fine. But things like forms, Ooh, I don't know. I don't know if anybody's got a solution for that. Actually, you mentioned there was a tool, didn't you, that can sort of mimic user behavior and go and fill out forms and then see if things are behaving as you'd expect.
Yeah, I think the real, probably the closest we'll get to an industry standard for this kind of monitoring would be Ghost Inspector. And I don't even think there's a free trial thing that you get. Maybe there's a trial, but I actually do have it, and I do use it on one site because there was a free amount of checks that you could do, and you can decide so basically you record what you want to be checked on your site. So you could submit a form and get it to do it every day for you, and then report back when it was unable to do that.
But it's merely working on the front end. It's not checking. I mean, how would it? I don't know. It's not checking that an email is generated and received. It's just saying, can I fill in this field? Does the button take me to the page I'm expecting to go to?
Yeah.
Right.
There is something, you know what? Fluent Forms, I just started using them on one site, and I was impressed by one feature that I hadn't seen. Well, I hadn't seen in Gravity Forms, which is what I've largely been using, and it does send me a summary.
Every week.
So I know, that form is probably working because there's, been 20 odd whatever submissions within that week, and I thought, well, that was pretty cool.
Actually, do you know, I'd forgotten about that. I received that email, and it didn't exist until a little while ago. I'm going to say 4 months or something. Or if it did exist, I hadn't enabled it. And I didn't enable it, and it began arriving. And in my case, it's going out I think it says a 7-day summary.
Yes.
And yeah, that's a good point. That's a really nice way of sort of skirting around that problem, because obviously if you've received no email to say your contact form has been filled out 6 times, and yet there they are, 6 entries, and it says it in the email that you receive, maybe there's a problem. Of course, it doesn't solve the problem of if the SMTP's gone wrong, because probably you won't get that email anyway, but it's a nice try.
Yeah. I mean, maybe about a month ago, I had someone, and it's been a long time since I had this, they've said our contact form is not working. So I went and checked, and they said they did their own check, and they didn't get their email. So I went to check, and it was working. It was recorded. It was in the database, so it was there. So because the email's their responsibility with the plan that I have, the only thing I'm responsible for in our case is transactional emails, which for me, I'm using Mailgun. There is Sending Blue and other things. Mail Poet as a plugin will do that for you as well, even on the free version. So at least I could check at least 30 days back whether things have gone from there, and it gives me kind of a routine, so I could see that they've been delivered. So at least I was able to send it to them and say, look, from my perspective, it's sending them, and it says it's accepted as well. It's actually delivered, so it's been accepted and then delivered, so it must be your end. But to my embarrassment, I went and changed the email address that I was using to send, and it started sending to them. So there was some responsibility on my side. But it didn't worry me, the idea that I wouldn't know until they told me.
No, that's true. I mean, I use largely Amazon SES for transactional emails. There's no free tier or anything. The constraints are on how many you can send per second, and I think on my level it's like 28 emails per second or something, way in excess of what I'll ever need. And they charge per email, but it's a ridiculously small amount. I think it's like 1/100th of a US cent or something like that. It's an extraordinarily small amount. But also I've used a service called MXRoute, and that enables you via a web interface. I believe it's called Roundcube. You can see what the inbox has done. So, you can see that things have been sent and so on. But you're right, it's a bit of a grey area. You wonder in many ways, actually, that there isn't an app. And it would probably have to be a desktop app or something which could do what was that thing called? Ghost Inspector could do. But, you would literally open up I don't know, it would use some sort of automation to open up a browser tab, fill out the form, and then open your mail client and just check for some receipt of an email. Maybe there is something like that, just to check it's all working as expected.
Yeah, I really feel that's the biggest weakness I've got in looking after people's sites, because I just don't know until they find an issue. I mean, it's pretty rare, but But and I can only go, on free tools that I'm using, I can only go back 30 days to kind of check things.
Well, and the problem is as well is that failure could be utterly catastrophic. It could be the difference of, I don't know, somebody just walking away from an enormous contract or something. Well, we submitted it 2 weeks ago and we haven't heard back from you. We've gone elsewhere. It could be massive. And I guess there are liabilities to that. And I don't have any of that in any contracts to sort of protect myself as far as I'm aware. But that could be something that I need to look at.
I mean, the other issue that I have had with transactional email services, particularly if you're getting something on a free version that allows you a certain amount or very, very cheap, is that you're often sharing an IP address. And if someone misuses that, you can find that you end up being blocked out as spam anyway, anything coming from that email address. And again, there's generally not a notification from these services to let you know. This happened to me once.
Have you ever encountered this? This is a hypothetical problem. I don't even know if it's a real problem. But let's say, for example, that use the example of gravity forms. Let's say that for some reason your gravity form was being spammed. Some bot had found it and was filling it out with nonsense. And your client was successfully receiving those, but in their mail client marking them as spam.
Yeah.
Because in effect they are spam, but they oughtn't to be marked as spam because they are actually what you wish to receive. So, the spam prevention going on there needs to happen at the point of submission of the form, not of receipt of the email. I've never trained any clients on that crisis, but I just wonder if it is a crisis. I wonder if anybody's had that problem.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I certainly, with my forms, I do limit the number of forms that can be filled in on a day to stop it being bombarded. But it depends on the mail service. Are they going to react to receiving a lot of spam? What they're going to do? Yeah. Scary.
Yeah. Anyway, okay.
I'm scaring us.
Yeah, sorry about that. So, okay, what's next on the list?
Yeah, what else did we mention? Oh, yeah, we already mentioned, didn't we, that there is Ghost Inspector or something like that could mimic some of your other things like add to cart to see that your cart's running. So that's good. Well, we've started using a couple of tools, haven't we, for the kind of aspect of the visual layouts and style. We both bought HexoWatch.
Yes. It was a bit of a gamble in that it didn't quite feel ready. That when we bought it, I think you, more so than I, you had concerns that it was not behaving as it ought to. It felt fairly immature. But then it was one of these lifetime deals. It was a new product. But I'm really happy with it. So it enables you to plug in a URL and then it will deliver all sorts of reports based upon, I don't know, if you can say to it, so for example, look at the top 10% of this page and monitor if anything changes by 10%, then alert me to that. Or it could be, monitor the whole page, and if anything of any nature moves at all, alert me. And it's actually quite, it could be deployed. I always thought it could be quite an interesting competitor tool. You might want to use something like this for your competitors. Let's say you have a shop and you want to see when they've updated their homepage, that it could be deployed in that way. But in my case, it's being used as a tool to see if anything's gone wrong. And it's matured over time, and I rather like it now. I only use the visual tool. That there's the option to see how the HTML has changed over time. But I don't use any of that. I'm just using the visual tool, and it's got a nice little way of sort of zooming in, and it discolors certain things so that so it really highlights which bit on the page has changed. It kind of illuminates it in red, and it's good.
Yeah, and it's taken on some of the aspects of, I think, Ghost Inspector, where you can kind of change different states, or you can, I think, delay the snapshot it will take to account for a pop-up coming up. So it's got really quite clever, and it has solved an issue, particularly that visual layout and style, because that's embarrassed me a couple of times. Something with page builders, it certainly happened with Beaver Builder when they did an update. If you've got a caching plugin, it might not clear that caching plugin for you. Now they've solved that. They automatically clear all the well-known caching plugins, so there's not been the issue come again. But it's so embarrassing if a client comes and says that my homepage is all kind of completely distorted due to an update and the caching plugin interfering with it. But yeah, this solves against all that problem because, even if it sends me the odd false positive, at least it makes me look at a site and I feel safe. The other ones who aren't reported are just running as they should do.
Yeah, but really nice to be able to get in front of something before the client notices it.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe they'll notice it before this software notices it. But in my case, it's never falsely reported something. I've received an email and it really has changed. There's no doubt about it. So that's quite nice. And then you could go to the client and say, look, we're just noticed something on your site. We've been poking around a little bit and we've seen that there's been a minor change. Don't worry about it. We're on it and we'll have a fix and we'll notify you when it's done. And it kind of rolls up very nicely inside of a care package. It makes you seem like you're really engaged in their website and taking interest in it, and that's all for the good.
Yeah, I really liked it. I said the only reason why I was kind of hard on it, in fact, I refunded it on the life deal and then had to buy it at a greater expense later because I'd seen so many of these kind of visual tools where they would do a screenshot because I don't think it's that difficult to build that basic app to do that. There are some open source systems out there that they can build upon, but they've always failed in my experience. Those businesses have not managed to make a profit for long enough because people just won't pay that money for that one thing and because of the false positives. But I think first time I've actually seen someone nail that at an affordable price.
Yeah.
And they've got another product which came first, which was Hexometer, which does many of the other things that we might use individual tools for. So it does uptime monitoring. It will be checking broken links and all kinds of wonderful I can't remember all the things it does, but these are also other things that for health we need to check on.
Yeah, and there's just so many tools which do that kind of thing. I mean, really, so many uptime monitoring tools. I could probably mention half a dozen just off the bat. The ones that I've settled on is I have used Uptime Robot quite a lot. I remember, I don't know if this is still true because I've basically discontinued using it. I think at the time it was, you could get 50 sites for free.
Yeah.
And so that was more than enough for me. One account would satisfy me. Because in many cases, I'm just monitoring if the server is working. And so if I've got 4 sites on one DigitalOcean droplet or something like that, if one's gone down, that's quite likely the other 2 or 3 will go down. But I've used that. I've used the main WP one, I think. I've also used WPMU Dev have one. Obviously, your hosting company probably has something that they will alert you about. And I've settled on another deal which came recently, which is called, what is it called? Better Uptime.
Yeah. We both got it.
Yeah, and I'm really pleased that I got that. They send out an email every fortnight at least where they've added some feature. I have to say most of the features are completely beyond my understanding. In that a lot of them are obviously designed for teams and people who really understand how to connect this to external services, and they want to do all this automatically. Whereas for me, I just want to be notified and I want to go into the UI and click on menu links and so on and see what the problem is on which particular site. But they do nice things like they allow you to create a dashboard which you can put on a site. You could do, for example, on a subdomain, so that your website shows over a period of the last 30 days how much time it's been up. You can have teams in there so that certain people get a text message and it decides who ought to be getting that message based upon the time of day and things like that. It's really clever.
Yeah, it is really clever. And it's one thing that's quite interesting about that, and I don't know how well it does on that. I mean, it measures, as far as I understand, from 3 different locations. So it checks 3 different locations to see if they all say the same before it reports something as downtime. But I did come across this, I think, last week. There was a site that was saying it was down for quite some time, and I was looking, and they were right for where I was. But then I put a VPN on to look from the UK, where that's main audience for that site was, and it was up. And I went and did a search, and they were correct. But the interesting thing I haven't thought about too much, again, another health consideration, is the fact that sometimes your domain name service has issues in certain places in the world.
Right.
And that's the first time I saw that, and kept going back and just running a check and noticed that it was down in lots of different places, and it clearly had nothing to do with our site or our host in it. It had absolutely everything to do with who was providing the domain name server.
Yeah, we had, well, it wasn't we, a developer that I work with had a problem with it in that it was reporting things to be down and they were absolutely up. And I forget how it worked, but it was a server configuration thing. It was something that was misconfigured or at least needed to be reconfigured. And when it was done to their satisfaction, then it started to behave correctly. But I don't know if he contacted Better Uptime or if it was just something that he fixed. I'm not entirely sure, but something which didn't report correctly, or at least was reporting errors which didn't exist on the front. You could see the websites. It was reporting them as down and they weren't. But it now behaves for him exactly as it should. Yeah,
and it really made me look good the other week as well, Better Uptime, because it's got something I didn't even know was in there. I got an email saying there was about 20 hours, probably a little bit more, to renew a domain name that the client had. So I was able to say, well, you're going to lose your domain name quickly. And I just thought it was so wonderful that I could send them that email. It's not my responsibility just to let them know that I'm looking, covering their backs really on their site.
Right.
Yeah.
So, but that worked. That was a manual process for you. You had to receive the email and then send it to them. Is that because you get them to buy their own domains?
Yes, that's right. So it's their responsibility. But it's happened before that clients have forgotten to renew. It's going to happen, isn't it? I always say you're different on this, but I've always made that their responsibility, that they should have the ownership of that. But of course, I've now come to appreciate that many of those in their organizations, one employee will set that up and then they will leave and no one knows what's going on.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's a nice little feature. My registrar of choice at the minute, although I might be changing that, we won't go into that, is Google Domains, and they just send me things, and I don't, if it's expiring for a customer, I don't really get involved. But if I were to get something from Better Uptime, then that would be good. I think there's a lot of services which do things like that. So, for example, WebArcs, I know, has sent me similar messages in the past. I can't say that I can think of anybody else, but certainly WebArcs have done. I remember it was 7 days, or maybe it was 30 days. Anyway, it was certainly significantly more than 20 hours. I feel like 20 hours is a bit late, isn't it? But my domain registrar will let me know, and so I can handle it on that side. And in most cases, if I wasn't buying the domain, I'd certainly request the client to put it on auto renew anyway, just in case, because what's the harm in that?
Yeah. I was wondering do you do anything in particular for SEO? All your sites set up for Search Console? Do you get anything from those?
No, not really. I try to leave SEO in the domain of a plugin, and then leave it to the clients if they're creating blog posts and things, just to fill out those boxes. Now, before we started recording, we talked a lot about, well, not just SEO, but all of the new metrics that it would appear that everybody's getting really concerned about. The literal wealth of data which you can bring to bear to, it might be SEO, it might be performance or GT metrics or pingdom or whatever, Lighthouse and so on. And there's just so much of this stuff. I feel that industries are developing, careers are developing in these areas. So, there are people who now obviously are SEO specialists. That's been around for ages, but now we've got this new kind of career of people who are speeding up websites, and that's all that they do. And we've got other people who are maintaining, their job is to go out and increase how accessible your website is. That's a career. There's just so much thrown into this. But no, to your point, I don't really do much with that.
No, and the broken links we covered, that's something for SEO. But I used to use that broken link checker plugin, but having realized how much that kind of consumes of server resources, I've broken away from kind of using that, because typically I'll just ignore the information it gives me anyway.
Right.
Because when it's not my site, then they're not paying me, the clients, then to go and check on their broken links. So I get the information, and what do I do with it, really from there.
Yeah, and it sounds like in your model, that's not your purview anyway. That's for the client to sort out. And I would imagine, I don't know. I just don't know how severe and when I say I don't know, I literally don't know how severe the impact is on SEO of one link on a website being, I don't know, leading to something which doesn't exist anymore or going to the wrong page. I just don't know what the impact of that stuff is, but it feels to me like something which in a busy working day doesn't really command that much importance.
Yeah, probably. I mean, if you put out a new piece of content, if it took you so long to find these broken links or change those, could you put out some new content in that time, and would that probably do you more good? And that's the kind of balance we don't know really with these things.
But there's probably somebody out there who really does understand this, and I'd be keen to know how harmful things like broken links really are.
And and Google, we mentioned this as well. You had the same with Google Search Console. It can tell you. I had a few emails just saying about how my text will not be very readable on mobile. This is a problem, and I go looking, and I just cannot see what they can see.
Yeah, you get those emails periodically, and usually for me, it seems to be things that I've failed with on mobile. Yeah. And some of them, like you say, it might be a contrast thing, and I just don't see it. I think it was the most recent one that I got was, I don't know, a week ago or something, where it was telling me that a font was too small to be readable. I think that was what it was, and yet it was totally readable to my eye. So I don't know what automation goes on to make this stuff happen, and no doubt, there are ways that I could improve things, but it's like almost like a needle in a haystack. I'm not going to get everything right, and although Google would love me to get everything right, maybe I'll just have to resign myself to the fact that font size is 1 point too small, and that color palette is just a tiny bit on the wrong side of what the algorithm would allow, but to my eyes it's totally readable. But then again, there are people who this stuff really matters for. And if I guess if the algorithm's been written, it's been done with some research, and people really can't read that size of font up close, and people really suffer. There's a color clash there that I'm not having a problem with, but somebody else is having a problem with. But I'm sure for most of us, it's about finding the time in the day to prioritize these and make them important enough to deal with.
Yeah, and I learned something recently which I didn't know. Maybe a lot of people do know this, and I'm just behind, but Google Chrome itself, the inspector, gives you a lot more information than I thought. It has ways to inspect the contrast and whether that's what they think is right, which is what's kind of fooled me. I get something from Google telling me it's not good, and then I go and use Google Chrome, and I've just discovered now that I can inspect and hover over things, and it will tell me whether the contrast is acceptable. Yeah. So I've only, and also that there is Lighthouse now built into Google Chrome was fairly new to me.
Yeah.
So you can do a speed check.
You were the person that showed me that was even available, and I was quite surprised that it was there, and it was, I think it's, I remember listening to Sabrina Zidane talking about this the other day. It kind of matters. It is impacted by where you live and so on. So, it's not like a bulletproof piece of data that's coming through. Again, I defer to Sabrina's superior intelligence on this. I may be misquoting her.
But it's not all speed, is it? This performance is, if you go and click on in Google Chrome on the Lighthouse and go and do a test, you get a choice to look at other things. So you've got best practice as well as and accessibility things. It will give you a quick measure there. So it's a good way of kind of checking the health of your site from the front end anyway.
The problem that we're revealing is that there's just so many component parts of maintaining a website, and it feels to me as if the one that really rises to the top is updating and backups. Everything else seems, in my world at least anyway, to get pushed to the I'll take a look at that if and when I've got a load of free time, and I'm or somebody specifically comes to me and says, I want this on my website. I want it to be 100% on this metric, or to be 100% accessible by this standard. And I wonder if that's the case for most people listening to this. You're a jobbing web designer, web builder, using WordPress, and really your concern is having enough throughput of work to make your career viable. And maybe this goes two ways. Maybe this creates an edge for you, and you can demonstrate to people, look, and I will make sure that these boxes are checked. All of these different things I'm going to do SEO, I'm going to do accessibility, I'm going to check with some software to make sure that your forms are working, I'm going to check with some software to make sure that any changes that appear on the page which aren't intended, I'm going to fix up front. I'm going to do all the backups, blah, blah, blah. If all of these little ticks just create more opportunity for you to have work, as opposed to just create an opportunity for you to have more work that you're not really getting paid for. I don't know if I explained that very well.
No, you did, and it's a big question, I think, here at the moment. I remember listening to, I think, a couple of videos where people were saying, design trends, and they say, I'm going to do something different. I'm going to talk about what I think is really the design trends in web these days, and that is accessibility and speed, making good sites. It's growing. People demand this more, and to a certain degree, hearing so much about things like Google Core Web Vitals in various groups makes me think, there is more attention on that kind of help side of things, not so much accessibility. But I'm not sure. It's used a lot for marketing of products for WordPress, that it's faster than anybody else and speed is so important. But I just wonder if everyday clients still put it up there high when they're considering somebody to build a website for them.
Yeah, I think this absolutely would matter. Let's say, for example, that, I don't know, there's a website proposal out there at the moment. There's for goodness sake, what's it called? The document that clients send out when they want to get proposals in. That document, the name of which has escaped me at the moment, for a local government website near where I live. And I just sort of read through it, and it was pretty clear that the person who has created that brief has really taken this on board, and they've mentioned all about the SEO, they've mentioned all about the accessibility, and the accessibility bullet points went on and on. So this was really important to them, but it was a government thing, and the government cannot be seen to fail on any of these points. Whereas the guy that's phoning me up, who's a plumber or I don't know, a heating engineer or a lawyer, they just want the website, they just want to see it. And for it to work and the forms to function and them to get some leads. So I really think it matters which kind of client you're getting. But obviously you can't do the same price point for the local government one, which wants all of these tick boxes, as compared to the plumber, who's not really bothered about that so much. And whilst I'm not denigrating the purposefulness of those things, if the budget doesn't allow it, you can still build the website. Interestingly, the government website that I'm talking about carries the budget to make it worthwhile. They are allocating enough money. This is not a compromise. They're paying for this to be done correctly, which I thought was good.
Yeah, I mean, Google do play a part in it, and I think they are. I mean, that's, we've had notifications that the text is too small to read, and so clearly an accessibility thing. And I think they have that ability, as they have done with performance. Everybody seems to be talking about performance more than I've ever known. So maybe those people who are predicting that is the future of design, that more people are going to be aware of it, and they're going to consider this as an important thing about their website more and more. I'm not sure if it's true, but it'd be nice if it was. It'd be nice to build better accessible sites and know that someone was prepared to pay for that, or they saw that as a priority over some, I don't know, perhaps trivial animations that they saw and thought were cool and they wanted on their website. It would be lovely if somebody was saying, as a client on a budget, saying, no, the most important thing is that everybody can get to my website and read it.
Right, and there's the rub. How many people are showing up at your door saying exactly that? The answer is very small, I expect.
Well, I've had a few people, but again, there's a little bit of lip service paid, because if you are a government body or you're connected in that way, they know that they need to do something there. But there's also another kind of industry which they can be fooled by. So there are kind of like one-click solutions to make your sites fast. There are one-click solutions, almost, you buy this product and your site's going to be accessible. There was a There was a Tavern article, wasn't there, about accessibility? Yeah, one of those products there. And I've worked for, we did a website for someone who, that was their main consideration. They came to us about accessibility. And they weren't a client for long, but actually they previously had bought one of these all-in-one solutions, which really wasn't giving them the accessibility they thought they had, you know?
Yep.
So hard to know.
Yeah, like I said earlier, it feels to me like there's an industry now for people. You know, if you're in an agency, maybe somebody in your agency is the expert on accessibility, you know, and over there is the expert on SEO and so on. And maybe there's a career. Well, I know there's a career. People speeding up websites, that can be your job now. Take on a website, make it faster. People who bring to you a website that is demonstrably not accessible, that can be a job. You can make it accessible and charge accordingly. It's a career. It's really fascinating that that's even possible, because I feel that 5 years ago those jobs that was everybody's job. If you built websites, you had to do all of those things and more. I'm feeling that the big ticket websites are going to be farming all this stuff out to experts within the industry.
Yeah, but it really should start from the building of a site, isn't it? I always feel with a lot of the help things that we take, well, particularly, I guess, speed and accessibility, I always feel like they're kind of plastered on the site after the event. So if you get somebody to come in, but a lot of it should have just been in the fundamentals of our building, you know, of the site.
Yep.
And that's probably the problem with a lot of page builders. We do that for the speed of building a website, and then we have to kind of superimpose the way of making them faster and more accessible.
Right.
After the event.
I remember Gutenberg when it was rolled out, you know, it's designed to be useful for the 40% of the web developers out there who are using WordPress and, or I should say websites. And it had real problems with accessibility. I've not really kept a very close eye on that debate, but my understanding, in as far as it is that it has improved over time. But you've got to imagine that WordPress, with its reach into all sorts of different websites, government, non-government, you know, NGOs, everything, that this would be something where the default version of WordPress will take a lot of this into consideration. I mean, it is fast. But I don't know too much about the accessibility side of things. Time will tell.
I remembered something we didn't talk about earlier. We were talking about 404s and that kind of issue. There are a couple of tools out there that will crawl your site. So they are website crawlers, the Screaming Frog. And there's one that I bought called Website Auditor by folks called Link Assistant, or linkassistant.com. And they're tools that will just go around. And it's really revealing, actually. It's shocking sometimes. It's sites that you think might be quite healthy, when it's crawled through the whole of your site, you kind of realize, particularly with WordPress, how many kind of links you've got and dead links you've got, and ones that are not optimized. It is quite scary, because
just
it really
little
goes
archives that you didn't want to be public facing, pages that you really remember removing from a sitemap, and yet there it is. That really should never have been viewed by the public. It was some sort of, I don't know, landing page which shouldn't have ever been scraped. But just amazing. Absolutely amazing. There's so much stuff. I've got one of those tools as well, and exactly the same thing. It was like, how did that get in there? How do they even know that that's there? And it's some internal little link which you'd entirely forgotten existed that revealed the existence of all these different things. You know, just unstyled archive pages which just look horrible.
Yeah, exactly. And just basic stuff. I mean, I like to think that I've set it up so I always put alt tags, at least, even if they're not as meaningful as they should be, for accessibility on the images. And then you go and run one of these and realize that, you know, about 30% of your images don't have them.
Right.
It's like, what? So, yeah.
There's another job for you, David. What we've done in this episode is we've outlined all of the ways in which we're failures, and all of the things which we need to add to our laundry list of to-dos. So many, and we didn't get into a whole bunch of stuff. Like, we never talked about PHP versions and recommended database types and things like that. There's absolutely a whole load of stuff. We didn't get into monitoring of distributed denial of service attacks and all of that sort of stuff. There's loads that we could have gone into, but time is running out.
It is. Mind you, I have been thinking that I might just go and get the domain name Dr. Core Web Vitals. That sounds really good.
Yeah, I think there's a career in that for you. Yeah. Make sure that site is accessible and fast and good in search rankings, though. Otherwise, failure.
Yeah. Well, I like health monitoring. I think that's, for me, bringing this to the end for all I think I can say is that it's really become my business, which I didn't expect. Website building is part of it, but really looking after sites has become really the key thing.
I have to say, I am always surprised by the amount of knowledge that you bring to bear on this, because a lot of it is just stuff that I know I should know about, but you actually do know about it. You've actually taken the time, and I guess it's just the way that your business is structured. You're obsessing about these details, and you want things to work, and you want them to behave as they should. And I think you really are becoming a bit of an expert in many of these areas. It's great. Well done.
Well, I wouldn't say that, but it's definitely moved that way. And I think, it's not what I expected. When I started this, you just thought, wouldn't it be nice to build sites for people? That would be a nice creative thing to do. And now it's just turned into, how can we look after these sites?
Yeah.
Odd.
Yeah. Well, there you go. Shall we knock it on the head? Are we done?
Indeed.
Okay.
Let's say bye.
Well, yeah, I'll see you in a couple of weeks, and we'll have a regular podcast next week, and I guess we'll be on to, what have we got? A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I. What's I?
Images.
We're sticking with that, are we? We're not going to change between this time.
We might change.
Yeah, okay. Well, it's images for now, but see how we go. All right. See you soon.
Okay. Bye.
Well, that was a fun episode to record. There is so much going on in the health of our websites. I think we do this sort of stuff automatically often. That we know that we need to take backup, so we automate that. We know that we need to do uptime monitoring, so we automate that. And there's a whole bunch of stuff that we just automate. But then there's a whole load of stuff going on in the background. And the health of your website, I feel, is one of the areas in the future, as websites become easier and easier to build with the great array of tools that we're getting, page builders and so on. I feel that this side of things is an area where we can really sell to our clients and make sure that we've got some kind of retainer, some kind of care plan going on into the future, because a lot of this stuff will be second nature to people like you and I, but it won't be to clients, and they probably won't want to be involved in it either, keeping their website backed up and keeping it updated and watching for uptime and all of this. So yeah, a really interesting show. I hope that you enjoyed it. If you did, leave some comments. Look for episode number 224 on the wpbuilds.com website, or alternatively go to our Facebook group, wpbuilds.com/Facebook, and let us know what you thought in there. The WP Builds podcast was brought to you today by Cloudways. Cloudways is a managed cloud hosting platform that ensures simplicity, performance and security. It offers cloud servers from 5 different cloud providers that you can manage through its intuitive platform. Some of the features include 24/7 support, free migrations and a dedicated firewall. You can check it all out at cloudways.com. And by A/B Split Test. Do you want to set up your A/B Split Tests in record time? The new A/B Split Test plugin for WordPress will have you up and running in a couple of minutes. Use your existing pages and test anything against anything else. Buttons, images, headers, rows, anything. And the best part is it works with Elementor, Beaver Builder and the WordPress block editor. You can check it all out and get a free demo at absplittest.com. Okay, that's really it for this week. We will be back next week, but because we do an alternating schedule of interview and then a discussion with David Waumsley and I, next week it will be an interview. It will be episode 225 and it will be an interview. And we'll also be joined on Monday for our This Week in WordPress show, which is live every Monday, 2 p.m. UK time at wpbuilds.com/live. I'll be joined this week by some notable WordPress guests, along with my co-host, Paul Lacey. So join us for that. And I hope you have a good week. Stay safe. I'm going to fade in some cheesy music and say bye-bye for now.